Imagine that you are responding to an RFP and the reviewer is reading it at 11 p.m. on a Friday. That's kind of the guideline. They want to find the relevant information. They're not looking for flowery language. They're not looking for 50 pages of information. They want what they're asking for, and they want it to be straightforward.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode here on the Business Breakthrough New York podcast. We're going to be talking about RFPs, how to review them, and how to respond to them. So to take us through this, we brought on a very special guest, somebody that frequent listeners will know very well, Lauren Lanakis. She's the assistant director here at the Farmingdale SBDC, and she is the expert on the government contracting part of this and helping businesses to take that next step and open up that area of business for themselves. So, Lauren, welcome back.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Absolutely. So, first of all, just so we get clarity on what we're talking about, what's an RFP and what are we then looking for?
Right. So an RFP is a request for proposal. It's something that the government issues publicly when they have a need for something. And it's kind of like a roadmap of what the government is looking for, how they're going to evaluate vendors who respond to this need, and the contract terms and conditions. So it really, this document that when you find it online for the product or service that you want to offer, it will be the roadmap for how you will apply and how you will respond and be evaluated and actually administer the contract if you are awarded.
That's great. So it's almost like the teacher giving out the assignment.
Correct.
It's like, this is the work that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, can you actually do the work?
Right.
And so there are certain areas that you have to review to make sure that you're a good fit and that you understand what it is they're actually looking for.
Right.
Before we
Exactly.
go into the actual review part, I wanted to ask, so there's RFPs. Are there other forms of this that exist that are not RFPs that the government issues out to do similar kinds of work, or is it all RFPs?
Yes. So RFPs are one type of way that the government asks for a product or service. It's normally for services, RFPs. It's when the government has a need, but they want you to respond and how you will fulfill that need. It's not as strict in terms of, like, if, for example, if it's for lawn service, they're not going to tell you how to cut the lawn.
That's good.
They're going to ask you, how would you do lawn care? What kind of chemicals are you using? It'll be a little bit more free-flowing in your response. You're going to be answering questions.
Okay.
While an invitation for bid, a request for quote, that's more for products. The government needs 100 pencils. You have to provide 100 pencils.
Okay.
Maybe a specific from a particular manufacturer.
Got it.
And so while an RFP is a service where, you're responding to a request, maybe they're not as concerned with price because it's a service and they want to have the best service possible. With a request for quote or an invitation for bid, it's all about price. So you just need a pencil, and it has to be Ticonderoga. Whoever can give them the cheapest Ticonderoga pencil is going to win the bid.
I remember when I was in the military, we spend ridiculous amounts of money on like basic tools.
Yeah.
Like the infamous like $200 hammer and what have
yeah.
you.
I mean, it does happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, but the way that it's structured into work is to find the best product fit that fulfills the needs that agency or that department is looking for.
Right. Exactly.
So then for services, it's kind of the same thing, but it's not as strict because they're looking at you as like, you're the expert.
Right.
You're the one who's the professional in this field and what we need to have done. So tell us how you do it.
Right.
But then they get that from a bunch of different people so they can compare them side by side. So it seems like within a response to an RFP that it would be smart to include like your unique selling proposition.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's a challenge sometimes for business owners. This is a time when you want to brag and you want to be on, detail everything that you've done, why you are the best, why you are the expert. And that's something that is hard for a lot of business owners. We're not used to doing that, but this is the time when you're really highlighting all of that experience that you have. Yeah.
A lot of people do, especially small business owners, people that are just starting to have a hard time tooting their own horn because they know they're still growing and developing. But this is the chance to flex those muscles and get working.
Exactly.
That's great. Okay. So looking at an actual RFP, one, like, where do I find those?
Yeah.
And then how do we review it?
Yeah. So for federal government, you go on sam.gov. That is the one website where all of the federal procurements over 25,000 are located.
Got it.
Every state has their own procurement website, purchasing website, and every county, every town, every village has their own purchasing website.
And that's so important too, because we're going to spend a lot of time on the federal side today. But if you're just starting out, it seems like a really good idea to start on that more local side, get to know the sites and the people actually, like, personally.
Right.
Go in, meet people, shake hands, develop relationships, figure out how the system works, how they want you to submit, where the information is.
Yeah.
And just that whole networking piece of it.
Right.
You know?
Like local context is really important. Where you're located. Are you located near a base?
Right.
That could be maybe then you start with federal. But if you're not, and you're, we're on Long Island, I would probably advise people to start with their county government, maybe New York City government, which has a lot of purchasing. So it just depends on where you're located.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's dive into the federal side.
Okay.
For the businesses that are ready to take that step, maybe they've already been doing contracts locally with the county, with the township, or whatever the case may be,
Right.
and they've kind of developing their government chops. They understand this a little bit, but they're ready to move to the federal side. From your experience and what you've seen, as far at least in the New York, obviously because New York is a state, the sub-federal side and New York contracts, is there a significant difference between the kind of process that these businesses are going through when they're going to complete an RFP or something equivalent on the more localish or the smaller side, state side or below, versus going and doing it on the federal side?
In general, federal is more regulated. There are more rules, it's much more legalistic. Not to say that the states are not like that. There, of course, is that aspect, but I would say the federal government is the most highly regulated. They have more rules to follow, while the states, local contacts have a little bit more leeway. They're not strictly governed, so there can be a little bit more flexibility. And it's important to talk to your local small business development center, research the local context in your area of what those rules are and where you kind of fit in. So for example, in New York State, anything below $500,000 is kind of set aside or prioritized for minority and women and veteran-owned businesses.
That's right.
So that's important to know as you're looking for those contracts. You can even filter for those contracts. The federal is a little bit different, so it's important to kind of know all those rules going in.
Yeah, that's really powerful. An incentive for people to look into the process of how do I get, if you fit the criteria. First, you have to know what the criteria is, and you can go back in our previous episode in this series of government contracting to check out, because we did deep dives into this. So the criteria, the qualifications, they're all there. And if you don't want to go and watch a video, then just give us a call.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now let's talk about actually reviewing an RFP, or I guess maybe even like searching for that. So let's go to SAM.
Yep, sam.gov.
Yeah, let's show everyone what SAM looks like if you haven't seen it before.
So this is sam.gov. This is the official federal portal for registering to do business with the government. So we've talked about this before. If you want to do work with the federal government, you have to be registered on sam.gov. But anyone can actually search for procurement opportunities. You don't have to be registered on sam.gov. You just navigate to the search tab.
But you do have to create a login and have an account in order to search it, correct? Or no? You can
we do not have an account here.
Oh, hey, look at that.
Yeah.
Let's go. Super easy then.
Yeah. All right. And then we go to select domain and contract opportunities. And then you can search by keyword, by location. You can search by set aside if you only want to look at small business set asides.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there it is right there. Set aside.
Yep. So there's lots of ways to search for
even dates. That's great. So you can look out ahead.
Right.
And I'm assuming you could layer these on top of each other so that you can have multiple filters on top. Okay, great. Yes. That's fantastic.
So if we wanted to type in, let's say I do laundry, I'm a laundromat. I put in laundry, the first thing that comes up is this opportunity that was just released today, July 23rd. So let's take a look at that. So this is the notice. It's through the Department of Defense. So here, right on the top of the page, you can see the agency that is listing the opportunity. You want to scroll down a little bit further. We have the general information. It's a combined synopsis solicitation, which means that there is a synopsis of what the opportunity is and a solicitation.
Oh, that's great.
So solicitation and request for a proposal, RFPs, are kind of interchangeable.
Same-ish, same thing.
Yes. So what this is saying is that this is a real opportunity. It's coming up. All dates and times are in Central Time. It was originally published July 18th. Offers are due August 24th. And remember, Central Time. So it's important if you are located anywhere outside of Central Time to keep track of those dates and times.
Yes.
So now if we scroll down, we'll see that it's a total small business set aside. So only small businesses can apply. So you have to be a small business, which you can check on the SBA site, Small Business Administration, to check if you're a small business. And then this is a description, the synopsis of what is being asked for. So we have the performance period. If you see on in the first paragraph, is going to be from the 1st of August 2024 to the 31st of January 2025. So this is going to be a little bit more than 6 months,
right around,
a little bit 4 months.
Yeah, 4 months. Yeah,
with 4 option years. Quotes shall be emailed to, they give you a contact, and quotes are due, at the date, before the date time listed on the solicitation. And then they give you kind of a summary of what they're looking for. Assigned SF 1449, completed information from the supplemental information section, price schedule, and signed amendments if applicable. And then they give you the place of performance. No site visit will be held. Now, this is important.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, this is important. Written questions must be provided to the government before Tuesday, the 23rd of July at 1 a.m. 13, does that make sense?
1300 a.m. does not
make sense.
Any sense.
Okay.
1300 would be 1 p.m.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's maybe a question we would ask the government. What do they mean by that? But as you can see, there's a deadline to ask questions. So it's very important to read the solicitation, go through all that information, and
that's the
write
day,
down.
People. If you are interested in this contract.
Right. Today is the day.
Yeah. We're not even going to hear this until afterwards. So
right.
When you're looking at the future, this is a very important place to look to understand, because you can ask questions and they will answer them about the solicitation.
Right. But if you ask them after this date, they will not answer them. So it's very important to write the questions out and send them by email. If we scroll down, we'll see some amendments.
Telephone, scroll up a little bit. Telephone, written, or electronic request for hard copies of the solicitation documentation will be discouraged.
Right.
And so all of this is so important to read through. This is the whole reviewing the RFP side of things. And so so that way you want to be in accordance with what they're asking for.
Exactly.
To put yourself in a favorable position.
Yes.
You don't want to be that problem child that's showing up and like, you asked the question after the day and now you're requesting for this and we said that we didn't do that, and it's written in there.
Yeah.
And so
every part of this process is an interview process, right? You're being interviewed or looked at every time you're interacting with the agency. So if you are phoning them and asking them for a hard copy of solicitation when it explicitly says do not do that, they're going to say, okay, this vendor is not detail oriented or not paying attention. So then we have some amendments here, and I see one is very important. Number 3, the set aside was changed from WOSB to SB due to a clerical error. So it used to be a woman-owned small business set aside. Now it's a small business set aside. So that's good to know. Oh, and look, and they answered our question. Questions were extended until 1 p.m. on the 23rd of July. So that's a question we had, and it was answered.
And it was answered.
There we go.
That's why it's important to read all the way through, because you might have immediately jumped on the email, sent them a question, and asked them, like, we actually did answer that.
In the amendment section.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, and look, and the quotes were extended to 1 p.m. on July 24th. So we have another day if you're listening to this live, which you're not.
Which you're not.
We're
sorry.
And then one of the most, pretty much after you're reading the description, that's the first part. The most important part to me is downloading all of these attachments, because this is the full solicitation. What we were just reading is a synopsis.
Okay.
This is the full solicitation with all of the things you're going to have to submit, or all of the things that the government wants you to be aware of in this entire solicitation process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so this really, I think one thing I wanted to just point out here is you need to know yourself. Just because you're the owner of the business doesn't mean you have necessarily like inherent skills in every single department, and you might rely on other people to fill in those gaps of what you are good at or that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
So if you're the kind of person that is going to breeze through, like this is me. I would be the person to breeze through. I'd send the email out beforehand. 100% I own that all day. And so to avoid that, though, I look at people in my business and I'm like, okay, who's like my kind of chief of staff, or like who's really good and pays close attention to detail. I want them to review this, and then we can communicate about it afterwards. Because I know myself well enough that I'm probably going to put the wrong foot forward in this ongoing interview process that you're discussing.
Yeah, you want to try to make this a team effort. You want to have someone who's detail oriented reading through these, and you also want to have a good writer in your on your team who's going to be responding to this.
That's a very good point.
I really want to emphasize that the person writing your response should know your company inside and out. So ideally, it would be an employee. It wouldn't be a company that you're hiring to write your RFP. It would be someone who knows the business and happens to be a good writer who can communicate that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So now we downloaded the solicitations. Let's pull it up. Now, what I love about this first page, this is a page you're going to see pretty much on every solicitation, it's a great way to see if, right off the bat, if this is the right procurement for you.
Great.
Because it has all the information you're going to need. So the solicitation issue date we see here is July 18th. The due date is July 24th. So right off the bat, are you going to have enough time to respond to the solicitation if you just saw it on the 18th when it was released? This is a decision to make as a business.
That's do you think that this is standard or based off what you've seen as far as the solicitation issue date and that distance, the short distance, what I would think from the offer? Is that normal?
Normal is relative.
Yeah.
It depends on the agency, and it could be normal. It could be
it's
that
not necessarily uncommon.
It's not uncommon, but it would definitely, that would raise a little bit of a red flag for me. Like maybe they have someone in mind already. And I don't want, this is not to disparage anyone who works at Fort McCoy in Wisconsin.
We're not talking about you. This is generalities. We're painting with broad strokes right now.
Right.
We love Fort McCoy.
Just, but that would be a question I have. Why is there such a short timeline of responses? Is this just because it was rushed and it's a budget issue? Depends. But as a business, I'd want to say, do I have the time and energy to respond to this right now? Section 9 issued by Fort McCoy in Wisconsin. Am I able to provide services in Wisconsin? Laundry. Like, if I'm in New York, probably not.
Yeah. We're not going to expand our business out there. This is the first time. Yeah.
Maybe. But
if you're already there.
Not.
And so that goes back to the filters that you were talking about and being able to search, because you can close that down by choosing location. I'm pretty sure that was on your list too. So
place of performance.
Yep. So that way you are, if you're searching this and this shows up and you're using those filters and everything appropriately for you and your business, then you're good.
Yeah.
And so that's great.
Right.
Okay.
All right. And then 10 is what kind of set aside this is for. So it says 100% set aside for women-owned business, but in the synopsis, they told us that was not correct, that this is actually a small business set aside. So that's just important to keep in mind.
And that's great. They even give you the NAICS as well, and they give you the size standard.
Right.
So this is similar information that you would be inputting into SBA to determine if you meet the specific small business requirements. And that's one of the important things that I found out from working here was going on the SBA and searching it. There is not one singular standard that this is the definition of small business across the board for everyone. It's not 10 employees earning this much money. It's industry based.
Correct.
And NAICS code based.
Right. So this particular NAICS code, I imagine this is the laundry NAICS code.
Right.
And you have to have less than 8 million in revenue to be considered a small business.
Annually, correct?
Annually.
Okay.
Or averaged over the last 3 years.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. All right. Now, if we scroll down, you scroll down a little bit more, we just have some things that they're letting you know about. You can read through this, and you also have to fill out this form as part of the RFP process. And that was in the synopsis that they wanted this 1449 form.
That's right.
So we can keep scrolling. All right. And then we have our supplemental information. So the first section is telling us this is a firm fixed price. So what that means is that you're giving them one price and you can't deviate really from that. So it's important to come up with a price that makes sense and that you're not going to have to change.
Okay.
Indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracts. So what this means is that they're going to have laundry. They don't know how much laundry specifically. They don't know it's going to be 2 pounds every week, but you are signing up to do a certain amount of laundry in a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
But they're not going to tell you it's going to be an exact amount every time.
Because things fluctuate. There's no way that you could project that accurately.
Right.
Day to day, week to week. Yeah. Sure.
Right. Section 2, the guaranteed minimum is $2,500. So they're just telling you, what you're kind of guaranteed for that first year. Section 4 is telling you, the the time that you are responsible for this project. Section 5 is telling you who you're going to be emailing this solicitation to with all of and what they are looking for. So that signed 1449 document that we just saw, and then all that supplemental information. And then it goes through, all of the things that they're looking for. So if a quote is based on a teaming or partnering relationship, they want you to disclose that. They're telling you this is a small business set aside with a size standard of 8 million.
Oh, yeah, so that makes sense, especially if you have a joint venture or something where you're combining with a larger business. It might take you out of the qualification because it is set aside.
We could scroll down a little bit more because a lot of this was covered in the synopsis, but they're going to ask you for your SAM registration, your unique entity ID, which is given to you in SAM, your taxpayer ID, and your KH code, which is given to you in SAM. So this is also telling you you have to be in SAM.gov. The contracting officers, they're going to tell you that once you're awarded the contract. They're going to, section 19, they're going to evaluate quotes and award a contract without discussion. So there's going to be no negotiation in this. So that's why it's a firm fixed price. You have to provide your pricing and not deviate from that.
That's good to know. That's very important to read and to understand. So that way you're not submitting a price with the idea of they're going to respond back with this other one. And so I have to, I'm art of the dealing. And so I'm shooting super because they're going to negotiate me down. Like, no, the price that I'm submitting, it needs to be the best, most accurate offer. That you can provide.
Exactly. We can keep scrolling. These are all terms and conditions that are still, we're not going to go over them here, but very important as a business. They're asking you for your insurance. These are the minimum insurance requirements that they're asking for, right? So these are things as a business owner, if you don't have these, it's important to get them if you're applying. Mm-hmm. If you're finding that it's way too expensive, this may be a reason for you to say, I'm not going to apply for this right now. But these are kind of their minimum requirements.
And so this is actually a great practice, even if you're not actively looking, but you just want to understand what your business is capable of, is to actually go on to SAM and figure out, set the filters up for your business, where you're at realistically, and start searching as if you're in that space and you're ready to roll. So that way you can start looking at this information and see, okay, well, what's our current insurance and what are they asking for?
Right.
Like, oh, we actually hit that, but no, our bonding maybe isn't right. Or we're not bonded yet or something.
Right.
But that way you can really see, and especially if you review 2, 3, 4, 5 of these, then you can kind of see maybe a trend of what the expectations are at this level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So past performance information is relevant. So they are going to look at what you've done in the past. So if you're a startup, this is probably not going to be something you're going to be eligible for. Or again, if they don't have, we'll see if they have a requirement for past performance. But if it's an important part and they're highlighting it, it's going to, if you're a startup, this may not be the right procurement for you.
At the same token, if you just throw your name in the hat, be prepared to actually execute on that deal because you don't know.
Right.
You don't know what's going to happen. And you've experienced that before, I think. Or you've seen others go through that where they maybe put in for a bid with no expectation that they would win, and then they won.
And then they won. And then that's either an amazing moment for you or it's oh no, I actually have to perform.
What did I do?
And if you don't perform, that is very, very bad. It's just
big demerit on your report.
It's going to be very hard to get another contract. So whenever you're applying for these, you really want to make sure that you are set up to be a responsible and responsive vendor, which is something we've talked about in the past.
Right. Yep.
All right. So looks like we're talking about evaluation for your past performance. So the past performance that you either provide or they'll search for is going to be evaluated by 2 people. You can keep scrolling. This is talking about disagreements, resolutions, performance work statement. So you can keep scrolling. This is going to tell us what they're looking for. Description of services. So this is what they are telling you they're going to be, like all of the terms and conditions. You can keep scrolling. They're giving you all of the requirements for what kind of laundry they're going to be needing, telling you the holidays. This is important to know. Again, when you have a workforce, what are the holidays that you're going to have to, for this contract, recognize and not perform work on? When they're telling you when a federal holiday falls on a pickup day or delivery day, you'll coordinate with them to reschedule. So all these things, as you're going through, you're going to have to figure out and think about.
Yeah, and they really do. You can. It's a system that's been built up, and these solicitations are built up through so much time of creating the current system that we have, where it's like, oh my gosh, this is so long and so detailed. And like, there's a reason,
Right.
because each of these are a result of a complication of a previous contract that was written that did not include them. And then there was a dispute, and it turned into this thing where likely production time or service time was lost, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And so now it's being added. So there's a reason behind everything being in there.
Yeah. And this is a great way for you also to kind of figure in your pricing too. If you're giving holidays, if you're recognizing holidays, if you know you're not going to be working that day, you know, this is all calculated in your cost of
Right.
doing business. Keep scrolling. We're almost at the end. See, it's not so bad. This is talking about contract management, what kind of invoices you're going to be submitting. Again, very important. Remember, in the beginning, I was talking about this is the roadmap. So this will turn into your contract if you are awarded, and will give you everything you need to know about how to manage this. You know, when are the business hours, Monday through Friday. Everything you need to know is going to be in this document. And that's why it's so important to read it, to make sure that you know what you're signing up for, and if you have any questions or clarifications. And so we keep scrolling to the end. They detail the training that you need to take as a federal contractor. And we're all done.
That's it.
Not too bad.
Not terrible.
So this was the first document.
Yes. Don't worry, there's 4 more.
Yeah, which we're not going to go through today. But the other attachments will show you how to structure your pricing. They'll have the Excel sheet with your pricing schedule that you'll include. It'll have other addendums that you'll need to fill out. So, but as you can see, it's just breaking down the solicitation. It can be overwhelming at first, I understand. But as you could see, like, we just went through it, we read through it, and we saw.
And all of it makes sense as you're going through it kind of logically. And so you just really have to set that time aside to dive in, spend time reading the details and asking the appropriate people questions about different aspects of it that you don't understand, especially if you've done some federal contracting, but you've never done it for the military. And so you're seeing some of the terminology and things that are in there, and you're not exactly sure what it means. And so, but they give you the route to go to who to communicate with,
right,
and what the time frame is.
Right.
So that's really great.
And the SBDC is also here to help, or any kind of someone on your team that you trust to just go through it with and ask questions and talk about it. And it really is an exercise in reading comprehension. And I don't say that as like trying to be condescending.
Right.
It absolutely is reading through it 3 times just to kind of really understand what you're signing up for. The business hours is a huge thing, right? The business hours here, it looks like, are 8 to 3, which is great. You want to make sure that for another contract, it's during normal business hours. If it's not, if it's overnight, that's something you'll have to price for and figure out and see if you can do that. So,
do you have employees that are going to work? Do you need to hire people that can fulfill those roles? Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
exactly. So understanding each part of the solicitation is very, very important. And I can't emphasize that enough.
That's great. So when it comes to submitting or your request, are there any sort of tips or hints or strategies when it comes that we haven't already covered yet?
Yeah.
Or maybe even recap some of the stuff that we kind of...
Well, you saw in that last solicitation, they asked for, I believe, 4 documents.
Correct.
Right? And so you want to just provide those.
Just do what they're asking.
Do what they're asking. Imagine that you are responding to an RFP and the reviewer is reading it at 11 p.m. on a Friday. That's kind of the guideline. They want to find the relevant information. They're not looking for flowery language. They're not looking for, 50 pages of information. They want what they're asking for, and they want it to be straightforward. You can use images if you want to, if you think it'll add to your proposal. But if it's just adding fluff.
Yeah. It makes sense, maybe not for what we just looked at in the laundry side of things, but maybe if you are on the landscaping side. So you can actually show, not just tell, this is how we go about doing it, and we use these kind of flowers and this kind of mulch, and we cross-cut the lawn or whatever.
Right.
Like, you could say all that, but then show the image. It's like, this is what it actually looks like.
Right.
Sometimes images, can say 1,000 words, but other times they're adding 1,000 words that you don't need.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So just being straightforward and not being afraid to brag about your experience is very important.
Right. That's great. All right. That's wonderful. Anything else? I think we did it. All right. And
should we talk about responses more or anything like that?
No. At this point, there's enough information there where people can actually go on to SAM, look at the different contracts. They have a solid walkthrough of what to look for in there. And if as you're going through, you have any questions, and maybe you don't have the built up team and you really are looking forward, your business isn't there, but if you want to understand so you can start knocking out or like building some of that foundation so that way over the next 2-3 years you can get there, then come talk to the SBDC. Go to your local SBDC anywhere in the States. You're going to find one, and they'll be able to help guide you along the way.
Yeah.
And if you're on Long Island, check us out, baby. Check us out. Thank you, Lauren.
All right. You're welcome.
Thanks, Sarah.